39 years ago in 1985, I was right here in Brixton, South London, waiting to go into the Brixton Academy over there to see the Smiths play. It was only the second gig I'd ever been to. I was 17, and almost everything about that experience is burned into my mind. I remember the set list, every song they played, what they looked like, all of Johnny Marr's guitar changes. But most of all, I remember the emotional impact it had on me and how thrilling and exciting it was to be in the crowd. Let me tell you how this went down. We're all waiting in the auditorium. The lights are on, everyone can see each other. All of a sudden, the lights go out and we're plunged into darkness. Nothing happens, but we start to cheer. And then, blinding searchlights come on from the stage and start scanning the audience at the same time as a very dramatic piece of Russian classical music starts playing at deafening volume over the loudspeakers. So we are blinded and deafened at the same time. The band still haven't come on, and everyone starts to cheer at deafening volume. And then, through the lights, after a few minutes, we see the silhouettes of the band come on, not Morrissey. And then, all of a sudden, the lights go up and the band blast into the opening number. Still, no Morrissey. We go crazy. Then, at the right time, Morrissey comes on, gives the audience a little bit of a wink as if to say, "Oh, did somebody want me?" Tosses his hat into the crowd and starts to sing. It's an incredible moment, and I'll never forget it. And it wasn't just the sound of the band, it was the sound of the crowd. So if crowd noise sounds exciting and thrilling to humans, is it as easy as just adding crowd noise to a track or a chorus or a drop to make that more exciting? Well, that's not a new idea. In fact, in 1967, the Beatles did it. With the Sgt. Pepper album, on the reprise of their title track, they do exactly that. Crowd noise is added, and it's a really cool effect. The trouble is, that's what it sounds like, an effect, a sound effect. Yeah, it's cool to be able to hear a sort of fake audience, but what it doesn't do is make the track particularly sound more exciting or thrilling as though it were a live event. So if we can't just do it with a sound effect of the crowd, how do we do it? In this video, I want to show you how I discovered the power of pure noise. That's really nice. How I injected that excitement into my productions. That sounds so good. And added experimental energy. So here we are back in the studio. And throughout the 80s, I was really frustrated that I couldn't make the tracks that I was producing to sound more live and exciting. They always sounded a bit sort of sterile and a bit demo-y, for want of a better word. And I was convinced there was something in the idea that you could sort of add some kind of subliminal signal to the listener that there were like a huge crowd loving what you were doing. And I'd always thought there had to be something in just this sort of crowd noise thing, but I couldn't get it to work. I tried, compression and bus compression. That did its thing, but didn't really make it more exciting. Tried saturation. That did its thing, but didn't really make it more exciting. I just couldn't get it to work. Just couldn't get it to work. And then I got a tip from a really strange place, which is a rock band called Rush. Now, I didn't listen to a huge amount of Rush in the 80s. It wasn't really my thing, but a couple of my bandmates were really into them. And they made me listen to a track called Spirit of Radio, which I thought was a pretty good track. And sure enough, at the end, you've got this section where there's a crowd and it goes crazy. It's a great sound effect, but this time, I guess unlike Sgt. Pepper's, I actually felt the sound get sort of more exciting and thrilling. And I was like, there, look, it's the crowd. This is the kind of thing we've got to do. So I tried that and that didn't work. But then they played me another track by Rush called Distant Early Warning on an album called Grace Under Pressure. And that just had straight up white noise. Or so I thought it was white noise. Actually, it was a special kind of white noise, and it was tuned, and it was so loud that you could really hear it, obviously, be noise. But it sounded exciting, and it sounded thrilling. And I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe you just use noise, or you use a special kind of noise. So I started asking around, and the trouble is, I heard lots of stories, but I couldn't corroborate any of them at the time. But then, in the 90s, a friend of mine was in a rock band and was making a record which was produced by Ian Stanley, who'd been in Tears for Fears. You know, it doesn't get much more 80s and pop and synthpop than those guys. And even though it was a rock record, he added noise to the chorus, and his words were, "This is an exciter. It'll make it more exciting." I was like, this is my eureka moment. Now I know it's true. This is the corroboration. So I better go and figure out how to do this. Right? I know it's possible. Now all I've got to do is figure out how to do it. Right, okay, let me think how crowds work. Well, how do crowds work? Generally speaking, there's kind of a rule, which is that an adult voice doesn't often go much slower than a washing machine on a spin cycle, and doesn't go much higher than a kitchen blender. So you put that in audio engineering terms, it's like 85 hertz to 255 hertz. But that's a good rule, right? So what I'm thinking is, what if I took some white noise and sort of filtered out everything below the sound of the washing machine and above the sound of a blender? Well, could it be as simple as that? I'd need a special kind of filter. I'd need something called a band pass filter if I didn't have two filters, assuming I was making that on a synth. And not all my synths have band pass filters, but two of them do. And one of them's in the rack right now. So let's see if we can make the patch and get it to sound a bit like a crowd. And then we'll add it to the track, and I'll show you how it does actually make something more exciting. That sounds so good. And not only that, it's such a cool sound, you can actually do a noise solo that's actually really good. So I'm going to show you how to get such a good noise sound you can basically play it like an instrument. So let's go to the Neutron. Okay, this is my Neutron. The first thing I want to do is make sure we're only listening to the noise. So I patch directly out of the noise, straight into the filter. And that just bypasses these oscillators here. Now, the amp envelope, we've got 0 attack, 0 decay, full sustain and 0 release. And exactly the same on the filter envelope. I'll give the amp envelope just a bit of release. So now let's look at the filter. Well, it's in normal low pass mode. Pretty normal, doesn't really sound like a crowd. So let's put it in band pass mode. That sounds like this. Well, there might be something there, but it's not really pronounced enough. So let's use the resonance to make it more pronounced. Put the resonance up to about 50%. Yeah, you have to really suspend disbelief, but that's about sort of the sound of the crowd. Sounds like Doctor Who, doesn't it? Now what we're going to do is we're not going to control it by sweeping the filter quite. We're going to use key tracking. We have to tune in the key tracking. So I'm going to hold down a C on my keyboard, which is sort of the bottom crowd tune I'm going to use. It's around about there. It's like funny because, you know, if you kind of come from up here, the brain hears a filter sweep. But if you just listen to that, I can absolutely hear it sounding like a very, very large crowd screaming. Too low, it doesn't work. Too high, it doesn't work. Do the sweep, it doesn't work. But just hit it with that and I can certainly hear it. So it's pretty much the patch, but I want to drive it a bit more. And what I'm going to do, because I can now not only change the sort of the pitch of the chair by the keyboard, I can also use pitch bend, which is really nice. Now, when a crowd suddenly starts cheering at a higher pitch, they don't all start together, they go in a wave. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the delay. Yeah, like that. Drive a bit more level. So now you get this. It's really quite plausible. So as you know, as you start to change the pitch on the pitch bend, then they sort of follow suit. I'll make it a bit longer. That's really nice. That is the patch. So this tuning in the filter, absolutely critical. And now let's see it in the context of a track and see if we can use it to lift a chorus and make it more exciting and thrilling. Okay, I've started the timer, which you can see at the top of the screen, and I'm going to try and get the entire programming session done within 20 minutes. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the BPM to 116, which is a really good speed for 80s style synth pop disco. But the first sound I'm going to put in is a hit. So that's a detuned tom out of the old Roland drum machine. And let me just make that a 2-bar phrase so the hit happens at the beginning of every 2 bars instead of 1 bar. And now I'm going to put in some hi-hats just so that I know where I am in terms of the tempo. So normal disco style hi-hats. Great. They might be a little loud. Maybe I'll turn them down later. Now I'm going to put a lot of bass parts in this track. And the first one I'm going to do is a pedal bass on the Moog. I'm sorry, Behringer Model D. So there we go, let me just track that in. Great, and that's got an LFO modulating some cutoff filter on it. But now, let me set up a key because I'm going to gate that. Just a normal 8s key. Okay, there we go. And now go over to the Drawmer and just take the gate out of bypass. Great. It's really good to have that modulation going under the gate. It's already a really good sound. And the next sound I'm going to add is a bass pad. So I've got a really nice pad that I worked up earlier. It's really good, even in mono. But I'm going to use it for a bass pad sound, which I'm now also going to gate. Okay, so let me sort of invent a kind of Lady Gaga, Sweet Dreamsy type part. Maybe something like that. Just figuring these parts out on the fly. Help if I play it correctly. I'll make it a 4-bar phrase so I can get a bit of variation. Note how I'm holding the pedal note with my left thumb because it's a poly patch. This will sound very different on a mono patch. Now let's kick in the gate. Now you see what I mean by it being Sweet Dreamsy or Lady Gaga Poker Face. I don't know if a gate was used in Sweet Dreams, but to my ear it sounds like it. Just change the level of it a little bit and adjust some of the gate parameters. Sounds really good. I'll probably end up muting the hats in this section, but it's good to keep them in just while I'm programming it up, especially when I'm tracking parts in. Alright, so now it's time for a kick. There you go. All 4 programmed at the same time. It's my favourite kick. Again, it's from my old Roland. Right, let's put the snares in. There's just slightly unusual snare pattern. That's really good. Right, let's put the hi-hats back in. Now I'm going to do the usual trick where I put a fill in every 8 bars. So I'm going to spin out an 8-bar pattern, just go to the final bar and put a snare fill in. There we go. Let's find the snare. Go to the 8th bar. Let's go. Da 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 da. Alright, let's just loop round again, just check it. There we go. So I'll work out all the mutes for the different parts of the track later, but for now, let me see if I can write a sort of 80s style cowbell part. Sort of Trevor Horn, Lynn style cowbell part. It's pretty good. I'm going to do my usual trick where I copy the first bar to a second bar, just put a tiny little bit of variation on the second bar. Very 80s. Sounds good. Alright, let me put in a clap as well, just a single clap. 2-bar phrase, clap on the last 8. Sort of an 808 clap. There it is. Actually buried under the layers of sound at the moment. Let me just check it. Sounds so good broken down. So few parts and such a good sound. I'm obviously listening to this at deafening volume in the studio. Okay, let me put my favourite FM bass. And this is a very articulate patch, so I've got to be really careful about the dynamics. Let's get the part right. Something like that. Try and make it 8 bars. Right, change it to 4 bars. Track it in. Here we go. Is that too busy? Let me take that again and play it better. Okay, here we go. That felt really good, and I don't think it needs to be quantized. It's always a bonus when I do bass that doesn't have to be quantized. So now let's do some 303. Right, let me just bypass the delay and reverb for now. And programming 303s is tricky. You've got to get all the swoops right. So this might take a little while. Or maybe not. It's all about those huge double octave swoops, but with a blend of attacking notes. And obviously, you probably can't play the knobs live. Something like that. This is where I'd normally spend about 2 hours getting this right. But today I'm going to spend about 45 seconds. So let me just track something in and see what happens. 1 bar. Okay. Maybe with the FM bass and all the other basses, that'd be okay when I add the delays. Yeah, the delays. Bring up the reverb to make it a bit more science fiction-y. And now let's try it against the other bass tracks and see if it sits properly. As I say, programming 303s is pretty tough, and if you program them using the old-fashioned method, then you have my admiration and sympathy at the same time. Right, here's the FM bass. That'll be alright. And now the gated Moog. Feels very good. I'll put the pad bass in, but it'll be too much. Yeah. Okay. Right, let's try and get some sequences together and mute states. So let me start with an intro set. Just the hit and the pad bass. Now let's copy that and add some kick. So for you Squarp Pyramid fans out there, I've got my intro on sequence 1 and then a development of it with the kick on sequence 2. Yeah, I think I need to put the Moog in as well for that second sequence. Maybe in the intro as well. Such a good sound. And we'll put the snare fill in just in case we end up going around an 8-bar phrase, and it'll be a really good pickup. Sounds very good. There we go. Right, so now let's work up a third sequence with some more of the rhythm parts and the cowbell percussion and the main bass parts. So I think of the FM bass and the Moog as being the sort of the solid parts, and the 303 is a little bit dreamy and sci-fi. So we're just working out different sequence collections, and of course we still haven't done the lead line yet, and of course we haven't done the noise. But this is feeling really good. And of course it's all dawless, there's no mixing, just rough balance. Just checking transitions. That cinematic doom hit is very important. It needs to be at a proper volume, which it is. That's huge. This is all feeling very nice. There's that 303 part with the spatial effects on it. Let's just try and play with the parameters, put the distortion on, turn it up a bit, change the resonance, cut off frequency, just get a slightly different vibe going. Oh, it's very nice when it breaks down like that. And it's time for the lead. You get the octave, right? Maybe it needs to be higher. Yes, it's a little bit like the pad bass, but slightly different rhythm. That's better. So I'm just pushing those notes. Take it 4 bars and track it in. The portamento really works. Now, as I'm sure you would expect, I've got this running through the gate which is in bypass. Take it out of bypass. But I want a slightly different rhythm for this section. So I'm going to go to another one of my gate tracks and put in a rhythm which is much more like the cowbell and snare part. As all you Squarp Pyramid people out there, I would normally use patterns, but for this kind of thing it's much quicker just to have it on a separate track. But you've got to make sure the original one is off. There we go. So then as we go from one section to the other, the gate rhythm changes at the same time, and I think that'll be very effective. So we're pretty much at the final stage. Let's just see what we've got so far. Take it from the top. That's a pretty effective intro. It's really nice. The LFO on that Moog under the gate is lovely. It comes in. It's all sounding good. Ow! Okay, so this is sounding nice, and I can hear how it's going to build up really nicely. Now let me just check the mute states for the B part. Make sure the lead's in. That sounds about right. Okay, so there's the A part. Right, now crash into the B part. 2, 3, 4. Right. And that's the problem. The problem is that should be huge, and it's not really. It's got the making to something really good. Well, that's a lot of fun, isn't it? So let's now look at the noise that we created earlier and see if we can use that to make the B part more exciting. So I think I'm looking for C3. Actually, am I in the right octave on the keyboard? Goes. That sounds a bit more like it. Okay, let me do a 4-bar phrase. And I've got pitch bend mapped as well, so I can potentially manipulate the sort of the level of excitement of the crowd if you think about it like that. But if you do too much pitch bend in sequences, sometimes I get worried about MIDI crowding. I know that notes take priority over CC, but it always makes me a little worried. Okay, let's have a go. Here we go. Let's get ready. I mean, it's the wrong level, but it's very effective. Really makes it sound like people are screaming. It's a lot more exciting. So let me track that in. 4-bar phrase. Right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. That's good. It's kind of deafening, but it sounds really good. And of course, it wouldn't be a Distort the Preamp video if that weren't going through a gate as well. That sounds so good. Sounds really good. I mean, that basically sounds so good. You could actually do a noise solo. You just like take the lead off. You just got the bass and drums and perk, and now you start playing the noise through the gates. So that's just me manipulating the gate parameters. I mean, I think that already sounds incredibly exciting. So this is an original mono pressing of Sgt. Pepper's. It's a gatefold. It's in fairly good condition considering it was done in 1967. And it says, classic of all classics, mono 1967. Oh my God, with Peter Blake cutout. £250. Honestly, I don't even know if that's expensive or cheap. What a unique piece of history.